Let's talk about something we've all felt. That idea that our mind is this battlefield, right? Where your cold, hard logic is in a constant fight with your messy, passionate emotions. But what if that whole story, that whole war, is a myth?
I mean, have you ever felt that? One part of you is trying so hard to get a project done, but another part of you is just completely hijacked by anxiety? Or you're trying to reason your way out of a really strong feeling? It's such a common experience, and it's led to this really popular but, as we'll see, pretty misleading idea of how our brains actually work.
So to really understand what's actually happening up there, we first have to break down the old story, the one that we've all kind of been told, the one that paints this picture of a brain that's divided against itself.
And this is the classic view. It basically pits two systems against each other. So on one side, you've got the rational brain. It's supposed to be run by the prefrontal cortex. It's cool, it's calculated, it's logical. And on the other side, you've got the emotional brain, which is rooted in the limbic system, and it's all hot, impulsive, and, well, kind of primal. It's a simple story, and it feels right, doesn't it? But the real science shows a picture that's way more interesting and a lot more collaborative.
Okay, let's dive in, because here's where that simple story gets a huge plot twist. It turns out emotion isn't just some saboteur trying to mess up your clear thinking. In a lot of ways, it's actually an essential partner.
Neuroscientists have this perfect phrase for it. They call emotion a double-edged sword. And that's because it has this incredible power to both help and hurt our thinking. And this affects everything, from what we even notice in the world around us to what we remember years and years later.
So on one side of that sword, emotion actually enhances certain things. Just think about your most vivid memories. I bet they're tied to a really strong emotion, right? A wedding, a graduation, maybe even a really scary moment. Those events they get seared into our memory, because that emotional charge literally strengthens the neural pathways that help us recall them.
But here's the other edge of that sword. That exact same system that helps lock in important memories can also completely hijack our focus. If you're really anxious about a big presentation, your brain flags that anxiety as super significant. This creates an emotional distraction so powerful that trying to concentrate on literally anything else can feel impossible.
But hold on, this isn't just a one-way street where our emotions are always calling the shots. Our thinking brain, our cognition, has a super powerful role to play, not as some victim of emotion, but as an active partner in actually shaping what we feel in the first place.
And one of the coolest ways we do this is with a strategy called cognitive reappraisal. It's pretty much a three-step process. So first, you have an emotional experience. Let's say you're getting nervous before you have to speak in public. Second, you consciously reframe it. Instead of thinking, oh no, I'm terrified, you tell yourself, okay, this is just my body getting energized to do a great job. And third, and this is the amazing part, that simple reinterpretation actually changes your emotional response. It can dial down the fear and even boost your confidence.
So all of this brings us to a really crucial point. That old story of a divided brain, it's not just a little bit incomplete, it's just plain wrong. The new reality, what we know now, is a brain that's built not on conflict, but on deep, deep integration.
And listen, this isn't just some small update in a textbook. Hear how neuroscientist Hadaz Okumsinger and her colleagues put it. They say the distinction between an emotional and a cognitive brain is fundamentally flawed. A sentence like that's a revolution in how we understand the human mind.
Let's take the amygdala, for example. We've all heard it called the brain's fear center, but that is a massive oversimplification. Modern science shows it's much more like a significance detector. It's constantly scanning our world and tagging events, good and bad, as significant. And that little tag is what helps direct our attention and strengthens our memory, basically shouting to the rest of the brain, hey, pay attention, this is important, this is worth remembering.
So what about the prefrontal cortex, the PFC? Well, it's not some cold, emotionless logic bot. It's actually more like a master regulator. It takes those signals from regions like the amygdala and it weaves them together with our long-term goals and the current situation. It helps shape our emotional responses so they're smart and adaptive, not just knee-jerk reactions. It's the conductor of the whole orchestra, not some separate musician off in the corner.
So what's the bottom line here? It means the brain isn't two armies fighting for a castle. It's a single, incredibly dynamic network, a place where emotion and cognition are processed through these complex, overlapping circuits. They aren't rivals, they're partners.
Okay. So, who cares? Why does this shift in our understanding really matter? Well, because this integrated model doesn't just change a diagram in a book. It completely changes how we think about mental health and what's happening when that delicate partnership breaks down.
To really see what this looks like, let's take a look at post-traumatic stress disorder,
or PTSD, because PTSD gives us a really stark, real-world picture of what happens when that partnership between emotion and cognition completely falls apart. In fact, we can map the symptoms of PTSD directly onto these network failures we've been talking about. Those intrusive, vivid memories, that's the memory-enhancing power of emotion just stuck in overdrive. Hypervigilance? Well, that's the amygdala, our significance detector, screaming threat at absolutely everything, constantly hijacking attention. And the difficulty concentrating? That's what happens when those powerful emotional distractors completely overwhelm our ability to focus. It's all just this tragic cascade, and it's all driven by a breakdown in communication, where the prefrontal cortex just can't regulate the amygdala's constant alarm signals anymore.
So, we want to leave you with this thought. If emotion and cognition aren't actually at war, if they're really these deeply interwoven partners, then the real conflict isn't between feeling and thinking. The real opportunity, the real power, comes from understanding their partnership. So the question is, how can you use your thoughts not to crush your emotions, but to work with them, to build a more flexible and a more resilient mind?